Yeah.
Thank you, Alastair, to have accept this invitation.
My pleasure.
And first of all, can you introduce yourself for our visitor?
I'm Alastair Reynolds. I'm a Welsh science fiction writer. I've been writing science fiction full-time for just over 20 years. Prior to that, I was a space scientist, and I had a reasonable career with the European Space Agency in the Netherlands.
And I have a question about this part. I'm okay, you have stopped to scientist since 20 years. Nevertheless, I want to ask, are you first a scientist or a writer? Because if I correctly understood, you have started very young to write.
Yes, I started writing, the way I say it is almost from the point where I could hold a pen. I was writing stories. So I suppose the writing has probably been there before, long before I was actually a scientist. But I think ultimately the thing that's behind everything is just a fascination with space and the universe and the future, and that drove me to become a scientist. But it also drove me to write stories and think creatively about what's out there.
And when we are scientists and in the same way science fiction writers, how do we do to conciliate the two aspects, and what are the influence of your job of a scientist on your job of writers?
Well, when I was writing science fiction and also being a scientist, I kept them quite separate in my mind. I'd come home from work, have a cup of tea, maybe something to eat, and then I'd go and be a science fiction writer for 2 hours. And the type of science fiction that I was writing was a long way from anything to do with my work. I mean, my work was space science, but it's very particular and focused on very specific little problems in space science that didn't really connect to anything that I would think would make for an interesting fiction, if you know what I mean. So the two are quite separated. I think the one thing that where there's an element where being a scientist has informed my writing is that I had an understanding of how science works as a human enterprise from within, because a lot of people see science from outside and they don't necessarily know what it feels like to be a scientist, or how what research feels like, the ups and downs, the setbacks. So I thought, I understand that. I know how science proceeds and how publication works in science and how frustrating it can be, difficult at times. So that was something that I think was useful to have experienced.
Yes, my question was around this, and I wonder if the fact to be scientist gives some limits, saying, I cannot say that on my novel because it's just impossible in terms of space, in terms of science.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, there's things that I feel I know as an astronomer that would make it very difficult for me to put them in a story. To give an example, one of the things you learn early on in astronomy is that certain types of star are very short-lived. So the more, broadly speaking, the brighter and bluer a star is, the shorter its lifespan, because it will burn through its nuclear fuel much more quickly than a small star. So a star like our sun doesn't burn fuel very prodigiously, so it can last a long time. But a hot blue star is it won't last long. So if you have a science fiction story or a film where they find a planet, a solar system around a blue star, it doesn't work scientifically, because there won't have been time to form a planet, and particularly if they start having like an ecosystem on the planet and life forms, it's like that's just not possible, because that star might only exist for 10 million years, which is a very short span, very short time in evolutionary terms. So you know stuff as a scientist that sort of guides you when you write. You know, that's not to say you don't make mistakes or fall into fallacies, but there are certainly things that you have an awareness of.
And if I want to discuss with you today, it's about House of Sun.
Yeah,
a good book, a big book with many stories. It's around two main characters that we have seen in another novel that is great. I will remember it. Understanding Space and Time.
No, it's not the one. Million Nuit.
Thousandth Night.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry,
yeah.
I've written it in
that's
fact.
Okay. Yeah.
We follow Campion and Purslane.
Yeah.
What are the nature? Because it's clone, but they have million and million of years of existence.
Yeah.
And why should not be they in couple?
Well, I wanted, for a while I'd had this ambition to write a science fiction story about a particular idea, and I'd read this concept that one way to explore the universe would be to send out multiple copies of yourself in different directions, and then after a certain period of time everyone meets again and sort of shares memories, because you can't possibly, no one individual can possibly explore the universe because it's just too big. But if you could send out lots of copies of yourself, then they could do all the exploring and then meet again and combine the memories. I thought, well, that's a cool idea. There's got to be a science fiction book that I could build around that. So that was the genesis of the idea of these clone families. And I didn't like. First of all, I didn't want the clone. They're not really clones in a sort of technical sense. They're sort of. It's a very advanced technology, 1,000 years in the future, that creates these copies. So this one woman who decides to start this whole project creates 1,000, better say versions of herself that have the same drives, the same motivations, and they look a little bit similar, but they're not like clones in the strict biological sense. And she doesn't give them all the same characteristics. So some of them are female, some of them are male, and some of them have certain attributes, some of them have other attributes, slightly different makeup to their personality. But they've all got enough of her in it that they have that connection back to their founder. And I thought, just as an arbitrary detail to put into the story, her intention is that they go out and explore. She doesn't want them marrying and having babies, because that's not the idea. The idea is this one goes out that way, this one goes out that way. So it would defeat her ambition if the clones started traveling together. So she puts in this prohibition about them becoming a couple. But of course, two of the clones, Campion and Purslane, decide they like each other, and they start trying to have more illicit meetings, which is against the rules of the line. So it's really just a condition that Abigail, the founder of the line, put on the clones to stop them spoiling her grand adventure. But then it creates a narrative possibility then, because Campion and Purslane have done something that's naughty.
And it's a reason why they are different from the other frag.
Yeah.
And
they feel that they're different. Yeah. And then, of course, then they get into trouble, and then the whole story starts. Yeah.
And they are both belonging to gentian line from Abigail. They live for a very, very long time. Is it a vision of the immortality? Not
really. I mean, they do live a long time, but they're not. So the story is set 6 million years in the future, but they haven't lived for millions of years because they're traveling in spaceships most of the time. Most of the time they're traveling in spaceships, and most of the time they're traveling close to the speed of light. So their perception of time is going to be different. It's not going to be millions of years. It's going to be rather less than that. Of course, they're quite long-lived, but they do spend a lot. First of all, they spend a lot of time near the speed of light, so they have that Einstein time dilation comes into it. But even when they're not doing that, they're in sort of cryogenic stasis or time pods. So the amount of time that they experience is a lot less than the historical time that passes. So I don't think I really concern myself too much with whether they're 1,000 years old or 100,000 years old. They're clearly quite long-lived by current standards, but they're not millions of years old. And the reason I didn't want them to be 6 million year old god-like creatures was because I felt that they would be too difficult, too remote from us. We wouldn't be able to empathize with them as human beings. So I thought, if I can make them relatively identifiable as humans, that'll make for a better story. So even though they're very long-lived, they can't always remember everything they've done because they've had to sort of organize their memories and delete bits. So they have a sense that they're quite old, but their lives don't necessarily extend back in their own consciousness all that far.
And so a question I have about the frag, because it's linked directly with your last answer. In fact, they see galaxies appears, disappears. They see kind of humanity appears, disappears. Yeah. What kind of humanity do they keep themselves, and how they can still live with a part of empathy or this kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, they have to be a little bit cold-hearted because they see the rise and fall of these galactic civilizations all the time, and they become a little bit desensitized to it, which I thought was part of the... for me, it was quite fun, because I could imagine these characters being really ruthless and cold when they're thinking about other civilizations. But within their own 1,000 clones, they're very almost like a big family, and they're very protective of each other. But they have this slightly cold, detached viewpoint about the rest of civilization, because they know that there's no point getting emotionally attached to a galactic civilization because it will be gone the next time you come around. So they're living these very detached lives with a very unique viewpoint.
And perhaps I have missed something during my reading, but I have the feeling that all the civilizations I've met are consequences from humanity, with people that are augmented. We have a form of big humans, yeah. And we have spirits, and we don't see real extraterrestrial...
That's correct, yeah. There's no, at least in the foreground story, there's no aliens in that book. They do talk about an alien culture that existed prior to humanity, and they call them the priors, at least in the English translation. So there's been a galactic civilization of aliens, but it was long before life on Earth. And this galactic civilization left behind artifacts that are still quite useful, sort of indestructible objects and things like that, that the lines can use. But indeed, all the different beings that they encounter in the pages of the novel are all ultimately derived from humanity.
And we see that the frag, I will use more the term frag than clone, perhaps. It's more representative to what they are. They themselves are augmented, they have made some choice, they became more human, years and after years.
Yes, I mean, there's some of the characters have made different life choices about how close to human they are as well, yeah. But I didn't want them to feel like gods standing around pontificating about the fate of the universe. I wanted them to be real flesh and blood characters who still eat bread and drink tea and coffee. And there's a scene in not to give away too much, but one of the clones, she dies in the middle of the book because she falls from a tower and she hits the ground, and nothing can be done. She's dead. She's not immortal. I mean, she has for all their medicine, there are limits to what they can do. And if you have a really bad accident, you're gone. So they don't have they don't have like some magic immortality technology.
And I have a question in mind, but I just... in fact, yes, I have it. So, Campion and Purslane, they are in couple, they should not. They decide to make a turn before the meeting against all the rules of the family. Yeah. It's important to break the rule. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they break the rule, but in a way it's what saves them, because they end up being late for the reunion. And if they hadn't been late for the reunion, they would have been ambushed. So they would have been dead. So the fact that they've broken the rules is it helps them survive the events at the start of the story. But it also, for me, it just made them more interesting because they're kind of a little bit renegade. Yeah.
Yes, and I have a very stupid question. How do these frags keep busy for such a long time? When there is some big distance to, there's some of them need to be aware to what they do.
How do they keep positive? Or
what are their hobbies? What they do?
Well, I never really talk about that, do I?
No,
but I think they spend a lot of time unconscious because they're in these spaceships, and they don't need to be conscious when they're in the spaceships. They're just traveling close to the speed of light in stasis. But I think when they land on the planets, we don't see much of this in the book, but it's kind of hinted at. I think they kind of just have a great time. They'll land on a planet with a planetary civilization, and they'll just maybe spend a year on that planet, kind of partying and hanging out and drinking and having a really grand time for a year, and then they'll go somewhere else and carry those memories with them. So they can't. I mean, in my mind, they were kind of having a wild, adventurous time, kind of like a student on a gap year, but stretched for sort of 200,000 years.
And 1000 Night has been written in 2005 and As of Sun 2008.
Yes, that's right.
When you have written your novella, do you have in mind to develop the universe afterward?
No, not at all. No, I wrote the novella, and that was a done deal as far as I was concerned. I hadn't thought about anything else, and then I was in a position a few years later where I was thinking about writing another book, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I got an email from a fan, and he said, "Have you ever thought about returning to that universe of the novella?" And I hadn't really given it any thought until then, but it sparked that idea, and I thought, oh, that's quite interesting. Yeah, I could maybe go back into the House of Suns universe and tell a bigger story. So that was the inception for that. It was just an email. And because I never have a plan. I very rarely think more than one book ahead. I don't have a master plan.
You don't want to control the universe.
No.
Since the two last year, you have several publications in France. You have so 1000 Night has been published by Le Bélial, such as House of Sun. You have Eversion that I have read too, that I was really impressed too.
Oh, thank you.
And you have Great Wall of Mars that has just been published, and I have it in my book to read.
TBR, to be read.
To be read, yes. What does it mean for you that in Le Bélial has decided to publish many of your work today?
I'm very grateful, really, that they're taking this initiative and being dynamic about getting my work into print in France. So I have nothing but admiration and gratitude, and I hope that from an economic point of view, I hope it works out for them. I think they were happy with the reception of La Maison des Soleils. And when it won the Grand Prix de l'Imaginaire, I think that was good. It was good for me, but I think it was good for Bélial as well. So I think they're happy with that, and I'm happy. And I know they've got plans for more books of mine. So I just be happy while it lasts. That's my philosophy.
And for the Grand Prix of Imaginaire, earning a prize. So I will 15 years after the first publication. What does it mean? It's
great. That book never won a prize before, so I always liked it. I always thought it was a good book, and when it won a prize in France, I felt like it was a vindication. So I was really happy and grateful for that. And it doesn't really feel like 15 years, It feels less than that.
And what today in the Utopiales? What is your feeling on this kind of festival? What does it bring to you?
It's a very. I don't know how. We don't have things like this in the UK. We have sort of science fiction festivals, but they're different. And I guess we have things like Comic-Con, but. I'm amazed at Utopiales. I've had really good experiences at French literary festivals, and I've really enjoyed them. But this is obviously quite a big one. And it's just, to me, it's kind of astonishing, the level of engagement so many people interested to hear about writing and works of the imagination, and to sit and pack out all those seats in the auditorium, and then there's people standing around listening to the authors and the illustrators and the artists and comic book writers and filmmakers talking about their craft. I think it's amazing. And then when I go in, and I've been doing these signing sessions in the signing room. Again, it's where did these people come from? It's fantastic. Yeah. So it's kind of it's exhausting on one level, because you're just running from one thing to the next. But it's nice. It's nice to be busy, and
yes, because
you feel at the end of the day you feel appreciated, which is nice. Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Okay.
And I will read the Great Wall of Mars in the few weeks.
Okay. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Merci.